Tonight, the search for a missing Melbourne baby taken in a stolen car. Live coverage. Heroism and heartache in a flood disaster. More than 1,000 rescued in New South Wales. Russia accused of war crimes as a major bombing raid kills civilians. And peace talks break down. Australia sending missiles worth millions into the conflict zone. And Demons legend Ron Barassi to lead a premiership party on footy's opening night.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the urgent search to find a missing baby taken in a stolen car in Melbourne's southeast. Cassie Zervos, police need the public's help.
Well, Mitch, the urgency of this search can't be underestimated. This is the moment security cameras captured a frantic mother running after her stolen car with her 11-month-old baby in the back seat. Detectives are hunting a 2013 white Toyota RAV4 with the registration 1HS50Z. They're looking for this man. He's accused of snatching the car while the baby was inside. The driver sped off from Push Grove here in Keysborough just after 2 o'clock this afternoon and was last spotted heading east on Cheltenham Road. The man is believed to be in his 50s. He was shirtless and is 178 centimetres tall. He's wearing black shorts and carrying a red item of clothing.
Please pull over, let somebody know where the vehicle is, call 000. We just want to make sure that the baby is safe and well. We have the utmost concern for the baby's welfare.
The manhunt has just entered its 4th hour. Anyone who spots the car or the accused is urged to come forward immediately. Mitch.
Cassie Zervos at Keysborough, thank you. The flood disaster in northern New South Wales has turned deadly as rescue crews raced to reach hundreds of stranded residents. The body of an elderly woman was found in her Lismore home, but there are warnings the toll will be higher.
A lifeline to residents live on air.
There's a rescue operation underway right now.
A Navy helicopter hovers above a home submerged south of Ballina.
Enormous danger also for the people who are rescuing them.
The tense moment a rescuer nearly needs rescuing.
Oh, it looks like that the army has slipped there.
When trying to touch down. Then a painstaking process plucking neighbours to safety after 24 hours on the roof. The small highway town of Woodburn completely cut off and underwater. Locals moved quickly to get to higher ground. Horses among dozens of cars stranded on one bridge.
We've seen children being rescued. We're seeing people stranded on bridges. But importantly as well, we're also seeing a community come together. We will be doing everything, continue to do everything that we can to get everybody to safety.
The ADF has some 600 personnel stood up or involved. Many and their rotary wing assets have been proving, as you can see on your own screens, incredibly important.
Ballina's evacuation order came this morning. The river rose quickly, swamping low-lying homes.
It's a bit scary because I've never seen Ballina like this before.
I've never seen this in my life. It was only a little bit of water in the gutter, and then I went and done my hair, and I looked back out and it started to run in.
It came up here and then flooded back that way towards the river. Yeah, within from 7:15 till like 8 o'clock it was done.
It's making it worse with the traffic coming in and out because the waves are coming straight through into our house and we've got nothing left in here now.
A day after the water hit Lismore, emergency crews made a tragic discovery. The body of a woman in her 80s in a flooded house. But hundreds of locals have been rescued, some with possessions, others with just the clothes on their backs.
We were freezing and shivering and scared.
Here, a pregnant woman is dragged through a window to be winched to safety. This family reunited after tying themselves to their house to avoid being swept away. And a frantic search inside a roof cavity.
Take the ridge out and it'll slide out.
Revealing a beloved pet inside.
Yeah, good boy, good boy.
Relief for those who made it to the town's evacuation centre, even in the face of so much loss.
The caravan park where we were, there's nothing left. It's all gone. Every single van or cabin can't be located now. They're just not there.
If we hadn't got rescued last night when we did, there's no way we would have been here today.
The threat is not over. The massive rain cell moving further south along the New South Wales coast, putting more towns on flood alert.
And this is a 1 in a 1,000 year event. This event is unprecedented.
In the Brisbane suburbs, where the water is subsiding, the huge clean-up has just begun. The Mud Army 2.0 mobilised, mopping up the remains of the city's north.
I really didn't expect it. You know, the stove's gone. Everything downstairs is gone.
A record 792 millimetres in 6 days, smashing all previous records. Residents will be able to return to school and offices from tomorrow. And a cow created a stir on the streets of the Gold Coast after fleeing floodwaters. It was eventually rescued from the beach. Mike Amor, 7 News.
The scale of the devastation is enormous. Michael Usher is examining the flood zone from the air.
Peter, we've been in the air for the best part of 10 hours or so today, and the perspective from up here is overwhelming. It's simply extraordinary. The size of this flood is just so vast. Now, this is Murwillumbah. We're about 300 metres above the ground now, a completely soaked ground. It is like an inland sea where I am right now. The main part of the town is completely under. I can see cars stuck on the outskirts of town. All of the major roads in the centre there are completely blocked. There's even a small airstrip and a couple of light planes underwater down there as well. So we've been following the Richmond River as it bends and winds down south from Ballina, but it's very hard to make out the course of the river. It's just water everywhere. There's no such thing as it breaking its banks. It's just spread far and wide. Where there should be farmland, it's just water. But Corikai is another township along the Richmond River that is almost entirely submerged in floodwater now.
Michael Usher reporting. Russia is being investigated for possible war crimes, with growing evidence its forces are targeting civilians. The attacks intensified as peace talks stalled.
One after another, they fell. What are believed to be so-called cluster bombs, munitions containing multiple explosive devices banned by many countries, dropped on Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. Here, a shopping centre is destroyed, houses and apartment blocks decimated, schools too. It was a relentless bombardment with civilians seemingly in the firing line.
This is a residential area with no military objects.
A rocket speared a huge hole through this unit. Somehow, it did not explode. But another did when it slammed into the ground outside this woman's apartment. Her leg was blown off. She did not survive. The Russians claim they're not targeting civilians. But tell that to the mother of this 6-year-old girl, rushed to hospital after a Russian airstrike on a village near the city of Mariupol. Doctors and nurses did all they could to save her. It was a fight they could not win.
Покажите этому путинскому хуйлу вот эти глаза вот этого ребенка и плачущих врачей. Пидор гнойный.
Here is the aftermath of the airstrike that killed the child. It's clearly a residential area. This woman lived in one of these houses. She was buried under the rubble.
I have lost everything. It was all blown to smithereens. I was covered in blood.
The human toll evidence, Ukrainian authorities say that what's happening in this country are war crimes.
This is the action of a state determined to kill civilians. There is no debate. These are war crimes.
The International Criminal Court is now investigating. The intensified bombing came as Ukrainian delegates travelled to the border with Belarus for peace talks with Russia. There was no resolution. The Ukrainian president saying fair negotiations can take place when one side doesn't hit another one with rocket missiles during negotiations. While both sides have agreed to meet again, there's no sign Vladimir Putin is contemplating a ceasefire. sending more troops towards Kiev and painting himself as the victim. Once again isolated from his own ministry, blaming the coming economic collapse on anyone but himself.
We're talking here about the sanctions that the so-called Western community, the empire of lies as they call it, are trying to impose on our country.
Putin is clearly frustrated. The war is not going to plan. He hadn't expected this. Ukraine's volunteers, the ragtag army of amateurs signing up to fight. This man, a fisherman.
Have you ever used a gun before? Have you ever had to be in this position before?
No.
Volunteers handed free Kalashnikovs, like the SES, with guns. Here, 22-year-old master's biology student, Ksenia.
This is dangerous. You could die doing this.
I know if I die, I die.
Wow.
She's doing it for Mum.
She's scared?
No.
She proud?
Yes.
They're manning the roadblock on Kiev's major southern entry point, mixed with regular armies, so many of them so young. This 25-year-old was a computer programmer.
Are you scared? Maybe.
Then a shout. Everyone is running for cover. One runs to grab me. We're headed for the concrete shelter. In Ukraine, volunteer lifesaving is at another level.
Volunteers just scattered here for cover because the alarm had gone off that an aerial attack was imminent. They wanted to get under this concrete shelter.
The threat passed for now, but they're ready to die for this land.
That's how much it means. The 1 million strong Russian army dwarfs Ukrainian regular forces 5-1. They need the numbers that the volunteers provide. A surprise force that has astonished the world, especially the Russians.
A community rallying with whatever they have. Here, a drive-by Molotov cocktail launched at a tank. Peaceful resistance too. These Russian soldiers, surrounded by the locals of Berdyansk, shouting, "Domoy, go home." The Russians retreated, but who knows for how long.
Our chief correspondent Chris Reason is in the capital, Kiev, right now. Chris, there's a new recruitment drive underway to bolster Ukrainian troops.
That's right, Peter. Good evening to you. The Ukrainian President Zelensky has now announced that he's going to open up the Ukrainian prisons and release prisoners to go and serve out time on the front line, saying they can repay their debt to society by giving back to the country that way. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and they will be needed. We've just received these pictures from the country's second biggest city, Kharkiv, a government building being obliterated by Russian Grad missiles, and that just a couple of hours ago, making huge advances too in the south. That as the country begins to be deal with swathes of snow. It's snowing here in Kiev as the alarms went off again this morning. The country entering its 6th day of war. Pete.
Chris Reason in Ukraine. Thank you. Australia is sending missiles to the conflict zone to help Ukraine defend itself in the fight against Russia. They're part of a $70 million lethal aid package as Australia rallies in defiance of the Kremlin.
Australia's iconic landmarks bathed in Ukrainian blue and yellow, a colourful display of solidarity as the Prime Minister chooses colourful words.
Australia will always stand up to bullies.
Cabinet's National Security Committee deciding to significantly ramp up support for the Ukrainian army with lethal weapons.
We're talking missiles, we're talking ammunition.
$70 million for those missiles, ammunition and body armour, and $35 million in humanitarian assistance to help the millions flooding into Poland. The missiles, believed to be shoulder-fired javelins, used effectively in recent days to take out Russian armoured vehicles heading towards Kyiv, and anti-tank missiles bought through NATO.
And I won't be giving Vladimir Putin any heads up on how it's getting there, but it's coming, I can assure you.
Defence Minister Peter Dutton's warning the worst may be yet to come, that having failed to exert military dominance thus far, Vladimir Putin might now be planning to unleash almighty hell on Ukraine's cities.
Russian troops can be particularly brutal, and I think people should brace themselves for what we're going to see out of the Ukraine in the coming days and weeks.
Scott Morrison suggesting Russia should be banished from the G20 and other international forums.
They have self-selected themselves as a pariah state, and no one should have anything to do with them, frankly.
Australian liquor outlets demonstrating that, taking Russian vodka off the shelves. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Ukrainian citizens are still desperate to escape the war zone tonight, with queues at border crossings stretching for 50 kilometres. As Sarah Greenhalgh reports, more than 500,000 have already fled the country.
This time last week, they were in school, now in a neighbouring European nation that feels like a world away, separated from fathers who stayed back to fight. My dad will be taken to war soon, says 9-year-old Milana. So will my brother. Her family travelled for 3 days to get here. That's the current average, and the journey isn't over. At the train station, a scramble to exchange currency and book tickets to other countries. The European Union is set to activate a temporary protection clause, allowing Ukrainians to stay for 3 years with access to jobs and schools, a measure designed in the 90s but never used. Today, this man was taking people to France, while Yuri drove 1,000 kilometres from Germany to collect relatives.
I wanted to pick up my wife of my brother and 2 children.
But after 40 hours standing in line, the children developed fevers and were taken back to the war zone, Yuri offering a lift to strangers instead. This refugee crisis isn't an accident, instead a direct result of a deliberate choice by Vladimir Putin, and now these people must carry the burden. Many are resigned to the fact they will need to start new lives elsewhere. Others are determined to one day go home.
Very big problem for Europe, and this is very big problem for all the world.
And Sarah Greenhalgh joins us from Poland tonight. Sarah, it must be chaotic there.
Peter, in war, certainly nothing is ever easy, but officials here in the EU, in Poland, and charity groups are doing all that they can to get as many people to safety as quickly as possible. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is actually visiting Poland and Estonia in the coming hours, and with the UK, of course, no longer part of the EU, he will be pushed here today on accepting some of those refugees looking for a new home. The number, huge, 7 million people expected to need help. Peter.
Incredible. Sarah Greenhalgh in Poland, thank you. The Western sanctions on Russia are hitting hard. The ruble has plunged to a record low and interest rates have doubled. Switzerland has now joined the financial war, dropping its neutrality to freeze bank accounts worth billions.
On the sidelines of a historic UN meeting.
Would you allow me just a second, because I need to answer this call, please?
Russia's ambassador learned live on air 12 of his diplomats had just been expelled from the United States.
The US authorities have undertaken another hostile action against the Russian mission.
America's accused them of spying and given them a week to leave, backed by an increasingly united Western front.
L'attaque de la Russie contre l'Ukraine.
Joining the chorus of condemnation, Switzerland. Russia's attack against Ukraine is unacceptable, the Swiss president said today. You cannot stand aside. To play into the hands of an aggressor is not neutral. After maintaining armed neutrality in 2 world wars, Switzerland has now stepped in to freeze assets. Russian entities have an estimated $11 billion parked in Swiss banks, about 30% of the country's overseas deposits. Monaco, a tax haven for the super wealthy too, followed suit with similar EU sanctions. An economic earthquake not even Russia's central bank could mitigate, shutting the stock market and doubling the interest rate to 20%.
This situation is unprecedented. This is the most powerful set of sanctions ever assembled.
The president speaking with allies again today, short of sending troops, determined to make Putin pay. In the United States, Ashley Mullaney, 7 News.
There's some good news coming in right now, and police have just found the baby in a car stolen from Keysborough this afternoon. A desperate search was launched when a thief drove off in a white Toyota RAV4 from a Keysborough street just after 2 o'clock this afternoon. Police made a public appeal, and a short time ago they confirmed the 11-month-old baby boy has been found safe and well, and we'll have more on that soon. The Demons have revealed their plans for the premiership celebrations in round one. Tim Watson, they're calling on some club legends.
They have, Mitch. 8 of Melbourne's all-time greats will be on hand to unfurl the flag at the MCG. Ron Barassi will headline the pre-game party, along with Todd Viney, Stan Alves and David Neitz. Nathan Jones will get his chance to celebrate in front of the D's faithful too. They'll all form a guard of honour on the night for the players in their grand final rematch with the Dogs. Also, we speak with star pie Jeremy Howe, who's ready to take flight. We go inside Tigerland too to hear from a young gun on his fitness fight. And Mitch, there's been death threats on the Aussies in Pakistan. I'll have details ahead.
OK, we'll see you then. Thank you, Tim. Thieves have shut down trains in Melbourne's southeast. Jodie Lee is there.
Mitch, they forced the closure of the Cranbourne-Pakenham lines. I'll have the details live next on 7 News.
Also coming up, the Andrews government lashes out over an embarrassing backdown. And later, top restaurants delivered to your doorstep, helping home cooks in the kitchen. Vandals have caused rail chaos all day for commuters in Melbourne's southeast. Live now to Jodie Lee at Oakley Station. And Jodie, it impacts passengers along the Cranbourne and Pakenham and Gippsland lines.
Well, Mitch, Victoria Police is now investigating this, calling it a senseless act of vandalism. Overnight, close to 400 cables were cut along the train line near Sandown Park, and it sent the network into disarray, shutting down most of the services here from the Pakenham corridor. Really, it couldn't have happened at a worse time. This is the week where people have finally returned to the office. An additional 50 trains had been scheduled to help cope with that demand.
We won't tolerate this criminal behaviour on our rail network, and we're working very closely now with Victoria Police to bring these vandals to justice.
It's taking commuters an additional hour to get home this evening. 80 buses have replaced trains between Oakley and Dandenong, but Metro Trains is confident the problem will be solved by tomorrow morning. Mitch?
Jodie Lee at Oakley, thank you. Tasmania has been cut off from the mainland by a statewide communications outage. Telstra says it's urgently working to fix 2 cable cuts. Locals are reporting internet, television and EFTPOS services are all down. A further 18 COVID-related deaths have been reported in Victoria in the past 24 hours. Just 5 people remain on ventilators, with 255 patients in hospital with COVID. There were 6,800 cases recorded, with just over 40,000 active cases in the state. The Andrews government has been forced to dump its controversial social housing tax in the wake of a fierce backlash. It's blaming the backflip on a greedy construction industry, but building insiders claim they were never properly consulted.
The Treasurer delivering a fatal blow to social housing reforms.
They are done, they are dusted and they are finished.
It is incredibly disappointing today that the Andrews Labor government has effectively walked away from the reform table for good.
The government walking away from plans to tax developers to fund public housing projects because of
a mischievous campaign aimed at creating fear around the cost of housing products.
The property industry says they never agreed to a 1.75% tax that would have added $20,000 to the price of a new home.
We've been very clear and consistent with our position from the day that this tax was announced. This tax was a tax on Victorian home buyers.
And because industry groups wouldn't agree to the tax, reforms that would have cut red tape on planning permits have been scrapped too.
It is sad that planning reform, of course, has been held hostage in this conversation. That's very disappointing.
With the state election just 8 months away, this backflip could have hardly come at a worse time for the government, which admits ballot box worries impacted their decision to ditch the tax.
The state government is tired. They are out of touch. They're falling apart. Every time they seek to offer reforms, it has to involve new taxes.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
Jane Bunn joins us now, and Jane, autumn has begun, but we still have the high humidity of summer.
We do indeed, Mitch, and it's not leaving us anytime soon. The first day of autumn had a low of 20 and a high of 26. March nights on average come down to 13, days 24. But in the first week, thanks to that high humidity, nights should average 18, days 26. March averages 50 millimetres of rain, but thanks to low pressure and moisture, we could see that in the next few days. I'll show you when that rain will arrive after sport, Mitch.
We love autumn in Melbourne.
We do.
Thank you, Jane. Police have just spoken after finding a missing baby and will cross live next. Also, a bushfire emergency in Melbourne's west has forced locals to get out of their homes. The heart-wrenching story behind the death of a teenage apprentice after just 2 weeks on the job. How ordinary Ukrainians are fighting back against a superpower, and Danny Frawley's family in a touching tribute to a fallen saint. Now returning to the police breakthrough in the search for a stolen baby. Cassie Zervos, the 11-month-old boy, has been found safe and well.
He has, Mitch. This is fantastic news, and the news police and his parents were after this afternoon. The 11-month-old baby was found just a short time ago in Cranbourne. It comes after police put out an urgent plea to find a white Toyota that was stolen from Keysborough just after 2 o'clock this afternoon with the 11th-month-old baby inside. Police have confirmed this very happy news tonight. Take a listen.
He is in the process of being returned to mum and dad now. Police have arrested a 46-year-old Frankston male, and he is assisting police with our inquiries. So I just cannot thank the public enough. It was a member of the general public who have notified police of the location, and subsequently police have attended that location and found the child safe and well. The investigators were with mum and dad down at the police station and have passed that information on, so I can only imagine their tears of joy. Without the general public, I'm not sure we'd be having this conversation right now.
Well, the baby is being in the process of being returned to his very relieved parents tonight. As for the accused, the 46-year-old, he was taken into custody where he is expected to be interviewed tonight, and charges are likely, Mitch.
A most welcome piece of good news. Thank you very much, Cassie Zervos in Keysborough. A fast-moving fire forced locals from their homes in Melbourne's west overnight. The blaze at Truganina took off just after 7 o'clock.
I know firefighters are doing a very, very good job, but still we were scary. I never saw this type of things before in my life.
It took about an hour for crews to bring the blaze under control. A Cranbourne business has admitted to causing the death of a young apprentice by failing to provide a safe workplace. Dylan Wu had been on the job for just 10 days when he suffocated inside a tank.
Dylan Wu was just 2 weeks into his apprenticeship at Marshall Lethlean Industries when he was asked to clean out a tank in 2018. He didn't know a faulty welder left inside the tank had been leaking gas all night. When he climbed in, oxygen levels were so low, he suffocated in the fumes. Today, Marshall Lethlean pleaded guilty to failing to ensure a safe workplace. Its lawyer telling a judge significant changes had been made at their Cranbourne factory to ensure this would never happen again. But safety improvements won't bring Mr. Wu back to his family, the court hearing a translated statement from his distraught parents. Death of a son who recently started his adult life has a huge impact. Wife stopped working a year ago due to son's death. If it never happened, our family would be a joyful, perfect, happy family.
Adding to the heartache for his family, Mr. Wu's girlfriend was pregnant at the time. His parents say they're devastated they'll never get to see their son become a father.
The business will be sentenced at a later date. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
Back to Eastern Europe, and Ukraine is set to receive $700 million worth of weapons and equipment funded by European countries. But while they wait for those stockpiles to arrive, ordinary citizens are busy making their own.
A bottle of beer becomes a bottle of fear. Ukraine's citizen defenders are reaching back into history as they confront its marauding neighbour, Russia. Molotov cocktails or bottle bombs, unconventional weapons in the hands of unconventional troops. These men, learning how to extract a possible enemy from a vehicle. They come from all walks of life to be soldiers in the defence of their country.
Whenever the soldiers are coming to your land, to your city, and they're shooting your kids and the civilians, then everyone is doing what he can do the best.
Molotov cocktails is one way they're fighting back. They were making and stockpiling them here at this craft brewery.
We would love not to need to go to the hideouts every time that we have sirens, and but we need to be ready, and we are ready.
The labels on the bottles are leftover from the last time Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 in Crimea.
What's that message there? It's Putin Huilo, which is Putin is a cat.
There are 400 bottle bombs in that collection there, but they've made thousands of them and they've been distributed all over Lviv.
To be used like this civilian attack on a Russian armoured vehicle. Much more punch than a bottle of beer. In Lviv, Ukraine, Jeff Parry. 7 News.
Back home now, and Danny Frawley's courage will live on at Moorabbin with the official opening of a welfare centre established in his honour. The late champion's family hopes it will prove a game changer for men struggling with mental health.
Danny Frawley's wife and daughters joined by footy legends, Danny's teammates, Hollywood's biggest Saints fan, to open the $16 million mental health centre. The family's dream come true, but bittersweet.
Our hearts will be scarred forever, no doubt. This is a new beginning and something to look forward to and move forward on. So thank you.
This welcoming mural, an emotional trigger deliberately.
It brings tears to my eyes every time. When you look at it, you see that this man has been through pain. He has empathy in his eyes.
Suffering depression himself, the former Saints captain was a passionate advocate. He died in a single car crash in 2019. Open to all, the centre has pools, resilience and treatment programs.
Really emphasise the connection between physical health, mental health and social connection. And that's what SPUD stood for.
You were an inspiration to so many. I was lucky enough to play underneath you down here at the Saints, and we'll do you proud.
During his life, Danny Frawley was on a personal crusade to remove the stigma surrounding mental illness. This centre will be devoted to that.
I think he would be super proud and super excited that this is the legacy he's leaving behind.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
An Australia Post investigation is underway after a truckload of mail went up in flames. We'll have the details next on 7 News. Also ahead, an alleged carjacker back to face justice after a wild pursuit from Melbourne to Sydney. And top restaurants delivered to your doorstep in the make-out food boom. An Australia Post truck has gone up in flames at Seymour, north of Melbourne. Its entire load of mail has been destroyed. Australia Post says it will contact customers with parcels on board the truck. A violent carjacker accused of leading police on a wild chase from Seaford to Sydney has been extradited back to Victoria. The 22-year-old allegedly held a rideshare driver at gunpoint last November before taking officers on an 800-kilometre pursuit.
Police allegedly found drugs in your car. Is there anything you want to say about that?
It wasn't my car.
The Victorian man will face court on 11 charges. Top restaurants are helping Victorians become top chefs in their own kitchen after the pandemic changed our dining habits. Meal kit deliveries is a $500 million industry as more people stay home instead of eating out.
The city's top chefs sharing their recipe secrets as part of the booming meal kit industry.
It feels good because people are tagging us on social media and showing us how they, plate up their food.
Benefit is exposure. Getting people out there interacting with our food.
It's called Make-Out Meals, where diners can enjoy a restaurant quality feed from one of 18 Melbourne establishments, cooking it in the comfort of their own home.
We're able to get a whole different group of customers that maybe wouldn't have come in before.
The recipes for the signature dishes are formulated in the restaurant kitchen, and all of those special ingredients are provided, which are then portioned and packed here, ready to be delivered to the customer. Food boxes were already growing in popularity pre-pandemic, now they're booming.
It's so convenient.
A $500 million industry here in Australia, it's a competitive space with several big-name players like foreign-owned HelloFresh and Marley Spoon, and it's up against the likes of popular home delivery services like Uber Eats and Deliveroo.
We've got such a great culinary scene in Australia and such great chefs and restaurants, and it just seems like such an obvious way to bring them all together.
And I do think it's a way of the future for restaurants.
Sonia Marinelli, 7 News.
Sport is next with Tim Watson, and Tim, the big footy clubs are flexing their muscles.
Mitch, they're taking it up with AFL bosses. We'll be live with exclusive details next. Also inside the Magpies camp as a high flyer reveals details on his latest contract. Hear the bizarre speech from Bevo and his plans for the Bulldogs, while the D's have grand plans for the round 1 rematch. A Tiger comes clean on his pre-season setback and his chances for round 1, and the Aussies receiving death threats in Pakistan. Welcome back. The AFL's biggest clubs are attempting to beef up their football spend after 2 years of COVID interruptions. Live to Chief Football Reporter Tom Brown. And Tom, they're taking their fight to league headquarters.
They famously battle the big clubs on the field, but off it there's a collective agreement and push now to spend more money on their football departments. One prominent club president flagging to me today that the big clubs, will take this issue to the AFL when all the clubs meet for the season launch next Wednesday. The AFL has been a bit of a success, slashed the football department spend by $3 million during COVID, but clubs including Collingwood are already on record as saying they think they should be able to spend a bit more money on football, physios, doctors, services for the players. The cuts certainly weren't popular with coaches, many of which, particularly the assistants, were cut during COVID. It will be a big debating point next Wednesday, Tim. Moving on to Melbourne, who late today unveiled bold plans, as you can see, to unfurl their premiership flag for round 1 at the season opener. 8 club legends and greats, including Ron Barassi and Gary Lyon, will help unfurl the premiership flag. Melbourne hoping for a big crowd against the Bulldogs, the premiership rematch on that Wednesday night. And just finally one for Carlton fans today on Charlie Curnow. He gave us the thumbs up, as you can see at Carlton, regarding his knee. He's on track absolutely for round 1. I understand there is a slight medial issue and they might take a conservative approach for their practice game on Thursday night, but he's on track, Curnow, for round 1, Tim.
Thanks, Tom. A reinvigorated Jeremy Howe says he's back to his high-flying best after a horror run with injury. 7 News can reveal the Collingwood star has quietly put pen to paper on a contract extension.
As the new headmaster took his seat, the Collingwood class of 2022 has a new lease on life.
I'm probably as excited as I've ever been, and even speaking to the skipper, Pendle's he's kind of like everything's got a bit of a new, fresh feel about it.
Having overcome a recent injury hiccup, Jeremy Howe is ready to take flight once again after 12 games in 2 years.
There was times there where I was figured, am I going to get my body back to what it was? Being able to do everything that I used to be able to do and confident.
Last year, Howe quietly extended his contract at the Pies until the end of 2023. The 31-year-old willing to forego the chance to chase a flag elsewhere to help Craig McRae's rebuild. With a new coach and a new game plan, there's a real renewed sense of energy and purpose here at Collingwood. But the question remains just how quickly they can bounce back up the ladder.
I'm loving my time here. I feel like I'm as excited and hungry to keep playing, and I feel like good things are to come. How long that takes, I hope I'm a part of it.
Jordan De Goey likely for round 1 despite a fractured rib.
The contractual stuff, he understands it's a big year for himself, but he's got to give himself every chance to be able to perform, and that's what we kind of expect of him.
The Pies ready to give birth to their new attacking brand with a clear role for wonder child Nick Dacos.
There's going to be a bit of a sharing role there with Crispy and Pendlebury, so they kind of get a bit of half-back and mid-time.
Andrew McCormack, 7 News.
A frustrating pre-season has put the brakes on Tiger Jack Graham's round one hopes. The midfielder has been plagued by injury as Richmond digs in to get back to its best.
Yet to have a clean run in recent months, a hamstring injury picked up on the pre-season camp, the latest headache.
It was actually training, but I reckon the 70k bike ride the day before didn't help. For me, I just want to be back straight away, chuck me straight in where the coaches put the brakes on.
The 24-year-old will be eased back into the main group this week, gunning to make an impact in 2022, taking on the ageing greats.
Trent Koch and Shane Edwards, they're not slowing down. Shedder's getting better and better, and Koch is the same. So as much as we can learn off them, but yeah, it would be nice to steal their spot soon.
A dual premiership player, Graham has made an impression on his teammates, winning support in the recent captaincy race.
I've got a few votes, so I'll take that, and it's good to know. Obviously, your teammates rate you. If you get voted in, it's pretty hard to say no, so it'd be an honour.
At the Dogs' season launch, Coach Luke Beveridge issued a call to arms, also addressing the COVID pandemic and atrocities in Ukraine.
Someone or some group needs to start the revolution, and on a more football-centric scale, our Bulldogs' revolutionary intent is to establish ourselves as a benchmark in this competition.
The Dogs play Brisbane this Friday. Laura Spurway, 7 News.
Cricket authorities are not treating a death threat made against Australian cricketer Ashton Agar as credible. A social media message was sent to Agar's partner, but Cricket Australia said in a statement there are extensive security plans in place for this type of social media activity, which in this case is not considered a risk.
We've got a lot of people here working with us. We trust our security and everyone involved, and we're feeling incredibly safe here in Pakistan.
The first test starts on Friday, and Mitch, that's all in sport.
Good on you, Tim. Thank you very much indeed. Jane is next with the forecast. Jane, what's in store tomorrow?
Well, Mitch, warm, humid, lots of sunshine, but the risk of a late storm. The full details are next.
Tonight on the latest from 7 News, we're staying across the deadly flood disaster in northern New South Wales. That torrential rain moving south, major warnings right now in place. All that as Queensland mops up its flooding catastrophe. Every breaking development as it happens on the latest from 7 News.
Hello again. While it's not the flooding rain of the east coast, we have severe weather in Victoria too. High humidity has combined with low pressure to bring heavy storms and a large area of soaking rain from north central parts down into the southwest. Storms on either side, severe in the yellow parts of the Mallee and Wimmera now, heavy rain leading to flash flooding. This is what Warrnambool will look like after a heavy storm this afternoon. Flash flooding, just that, the water rises rapidly. Our storms are localised, whereas the east coast flooding is widespread. The Melbourne area had the edge of the rain band this morning, light as expected, just a few millimetres. That cleared westwards. Then thunderstorms came in across eastern suburbs, 22 millimetres in Cardinia, 18 Berwick, 13 in Glen Waverley. Now there is the risk of further storms in the Melbourne area tonight after we reach a humid top of 26. It is a sweaty night ahead. The main wet weather today is on the east coast from Port Macquarie southwards. The rain has eased further north. Falls are not as extreme as they were, but can bring 6-hour totals of around 100 millimetres. In the west, Cyclone Annika is passing by Broome. So the areas of rain here continue overnight and they'll ease back tomorrow morning. Then hit and miss showers and storms continue tomorrow afternoon, mainly over northern parts of the state. The east coast rain wraps around into East Gippsland, continuing the far southeast on Thursday. Minor flooding, nothing like up north. Our next significant rain is due later Friday and on Saturday. Second moisture source, that cyclone. Stronger low pressure, so Also, widespread falls of 20 to 40 millimetres. This does include Melbourne. Around the nation tomorrow, 150 to 200 millimetres of rain in Sydney. Canberra, 25 to 45 millimetres. Heavy rain does not reach Hobart. In Victoria, leftover rain that'll clear during the morning. Then back to hit and miss showers and storms, but it does tend to persistent rain in East Gippsland. Closer in, tomorrow is generally dry. We're warm and humid. Keep an eye out. There is the risk of thunderstorms in the late afternoon. They clear out at night. The city, lots of sunshine, a warm and humid top of 28. There is a slight risk of a late afternoon storm. To the 8-day outlook, Thursday, warm and humid. Will stay dry all day with lots of sunshine. I'm expecting 30. 31 on Friday, warm, humid, lots of sunshine. Then late Friday night, it hits. Early hours of Saturday morning, we could have torrential rain in Melbourne, a month's worth in just one day. Easing later on Saturday, a bit more next week when the humidity finally backs off. So tomorrow it's warm, it's humid, lots of sunshine, top of 28. There's only the slight risk of a late afternoon thunderstorm.
OK, thank you very much, Jane. And that's the way it is this Tuesday, the 1st of March. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.